whole bunch of trails people in the audience, right? Yeah. Isn't it nice to have a governor who appreciates trails, their value and usefulness, and Governor Governor Holcomb, I think, has some vision in making this stuff available. Uh, so we're going to go through a little program here. I really feel uncomfortable with this. Is this geared to your height? Is that what it is? Yeah. Okay. That explains. As I said, my name is John Davis. This is Next Level Trails Workshop, the first of three. We are broadcasting on a webcast to 60 or 70 other folks. We're going to try to go through this program and explain the details to you. This is a new program for us. It's a familiar process for us. Many of you know our grant section and know that we allow grants for all sorts of things, trails and playgrounds and all sorts of recreation. This one's going to be run a little bit differently. I think, were we going to advance to the next slide, maybe? We're talking about $90 million in conjunction with the Department of Transportation, not the Department of Transportation's rules and regulations, but the money originates there, and we do have to follow some, what they call laws and things like that. So we're going to get into all that and just a little bit. We're going to try to answer all of your questions today, but if we can't answer them today, we will communicate to you, likely through our website, to answer all the questions that aren't clear today. I think I'd like to introduce the people that are going to be here. We're going to run through the program, take some specific questions, or some general questions, and then there'll be some resource folks here to answer other specific questions or clarify things for everyone. First of all, our team leaders for the Next Level Trails, Mark Becker and Amy Marsavovich. Mark Becker is with the Division of Land Acquisition with DNR. Why don't you guys step out here a little bit so people can see you. Amy is with our Division of Outdoor Recreation. She's the Streams Section Chief. Also with us, Dale Breyer. Dale, will you make yourself known? Dale's the Division Director of the Division of Outdoor Recreation. Tom Laycock. Wave, Tom. Tom Laycock is the Division Director for the Land Acquisition Division. This is terrible. Also, we have Shari Burke. Shari, will you wave? Shari is the Division Director for Purchasing. And Jeff Saucerman. Jeff's back there. He's the Division Director for Budget and Finance. Bob Bronson, the Grants Section Chief. Lisa Herbert is Grants Coordinator. Todd Blevins, the Grants Coordinator. Nathaniel Simmons is not a Grants Coordinator, a Trails Coordinator. Also Alan Hurst right here on electronics, the Grant Coordinator, or Trails Coordinator. And who else? Who else is here that I haven't mentioned? No one. That's good. So we'll all try to be here. We'll all try to be a resource for you today. I think, I guess one more thing. I do want to say that this process is a little bit different than other grant rounds that you might have experienced, but not that much different. And I think you'll see a lot of similarities. We crafted this, DNR crafted this all those folks we just mentioned, plus stakeholder input. We contacted a few people and talked about what the process could look like and maybe should look like, and we're going to get into all those details in just a minute. I think I've done my work. I hope I've done my work. I'll be around. Next, Amy and Mark are going to take us through the specifics, and we would like to wait until the end for questions. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We're really excited. It looks like that we have about 150 people joining us for this workshop via in-person or webinar. We want to thank you for coming out kind of last minute. We know that we sent this out within a week, and you guys got all got here and made the time, so we appreciate you doing that. Just some minor housekeeping items. If you need to use the restroom, just exit this room, turn left. There's men's and women's in the hallway. As John mentioned, the format of this program, we are going to walk through the grant program. We're going to walk through how to apply. Then we're going to take questions. So if you will write down your questions on your packet as you get to them. Hopefully, maybe we'll get to them in a few slides. But if we don't, we'll open up to general questions for the audience. And then after that point, we will take specific project-based questions after dismissing you. So we'll still stick around until about 6 o'clock here. But we will cut the webinar and dismiss you if you don't have any questions other than about the general program that other people might be interested in. And our staff is happy to assist you in answering those questions. We may not have all of the answers today. So if you have a question that we can't answer or we can't point you to the right person, please send your questions to the Next Level Trails at dnr.in.gov email. And that way we can get back to you with an answer as soon as we get one. A little more kind of housekeeping thing is just a few thank yous. We want to thank State Parks and Inns for hosting us today. This is a wonderful facility. We want to thank DNR Communications, who really helped us get the word out about this program. They helped us polish up all of our program materials. They're helping us provide this via webinar, so we're really appreciative to them. We also want to thank the Natural Resources Foundation, who provided all of our snacks today. So feel free to grab some of those cookies and drinks in the back. And we also particularly want to thank the governor and his office for their leadership and vision on this program. So I'm going to hand it off to Mark.
Thank you, Amy. Alan, can you hit the next slide? Thank you. I'm not going to read this quote to you, but this is something that the governor said as a part of his announcement for Next Level Trails. And I want to call your attention to two themes that you're going to see throughout our explanation of the program, how we evaluate projects, and my hope is that you'll see that throughout the, sort of as a thread that runs throughout this whole process. And that is, number one, connectivity, and the other one is collaboration. We want those two items to be a big part of Next Level Trails. So we're going to begin by giving you an overview of the program, and then we're going to get into the actual application process. As John said, the Next Level Trails will be a $90 million program to build trails in Indiana. We have divided that into two components. There will be a $70 million fund for regionally significant projects. These are going to tend to be characteristically multi-county projects, landscape level type projects. $70 million, there will be a $250,000 minimum grant request within that fund and a $5 million maximum grant request per applicant. Secondly, there's a locally significant component of this program for $20 million. It's constructed a little bit differently. There will be a $200,000 minimum grant request within that fund and a $2 million maximum per applicant. Many of the evaluation tools will be the same, but as we get into that, we'll show you a couple of differences between those two components. We're going to be awarding these funds in rounds. So today we're going to be talking to you about the first round, but we want you to know that this is not the only round. There will be future rounds. So if your project is not ready for this first round, that's okay. There's going to be subsequent rounds. And also projects that are deemed eligible but are not awarded in this first round are going to remain eligible for future rounds. You'll have the opportunity, if you desire, to amend it or improve your application as you see fit, or you can leave it be and have it evaluated for a subsequent round. The first grant round, which I know you're all very interested in, we're going to open up on January 1st, and it's going to close on on February 15th of 2019. The first round is going to award up to $25 million. $20 million of that will be dedicated to the regionally significant fund, and $5 million will be for the locally significant projects. This slide, I understand, might be kind of difficult for those of you in the back of the room. I hope you can see it in your packet. But this kind of gives you a timeline of where we are now and why we have constructed the grant round in the way that we have. The governor announced Next Level Trails on December 6th. We're holding these workshops in December and early January. We're doing this one. In addition, there'll be one up near South Bend and another one in New Albany. We'll be accepting those applications beginning January 1st through February 15th. And the end of February and March will be a period of time that DNR reviews and ranks these projects. And we want to get those announced in time so that we can get them in ahead of the state's annual accounting deadline. So our hope is that by having this tight timeline, we'll be able to get these projects awarded, and so that those of you who have projects that can move very quickly, ideally we'll be able to begin work in late summer. So that's why we have done a narrow time window for this first round. Eligibility for Next Level Trails. Eligible applicants will be local units of government and 501c3 nonprofits. There will be a $5 million maximum per applicant, and that applies across both the regionally significant projects and local. So $5 million cap per applicant, regardless of which component you're hitting. Eligible projects are non-motorized trail types. We'll be given consideration to multi-use trails. All surface types are eligible. The surface ought to meet contextual needs. They must be open to the public. Eligible costs within the program are going to include trail construction, including upgrading surface type, land acquisition, design and engineering, basic trail amenities. Those eligible costs need to occur within the contract period. There is a match requirement for this program. It is a minimum of 20% match. So the way that we will calculate your grant request will be 100% project costs, subtracting the grant, or subtracting the match, minimum of 20% will equal your grant amount request. Eligible match, we've tried to be as flexible as we can on this, and that will include monetary contributions, will include land value, and in-kind donations of materials and labor. We're going to give consideration to projects that exceed that 20% minimum match requirement. This program will be a little bit different than some of the grant programs you might be used to that DNR has administered in the past. Funds through Next Level Trails will be available to the applicant up front. They'll be awarded in stages based on project-specific milestones. So those could include design and engineering, land acquisition, and construction. The intent behind this is to get these projects moving as quickly as possible and get trail on the ground as quickly as possible. Recipients are going to sign a contract with the DNR, and the contract period will be for 4 years, so that means that we are expecting these projects to be complete within 4 years. The project selection process will begin with DNR staff reviewing them for eligibility, and completeness. This is basically a due diligence process that we will undertake. That will be going on in late February and March. And secondarily, there will be a review committee staffed by various state agencies that will evaluate the projects based on the evaluation tools that we're going to go through in just a moment here. I'm going to let Amy take over with that.
All right, can everybody hear me real quick? Online, you can hear me? All right. So how we're going to be evaluating your projects is in two different categories. Preferences, which is the primary things that we'll be looking at, and then considerations, which will be the secondary things that we'll be looking at to evaluate your project. If you have done grant programs with us in the past, it might be slightly different as far as just how this evaluation works. The important thing to know is that please don't be concerned if your project doesn't meet all the preferences and considerations. That's not, I am likely to happen that we have one project that meets everything. Actually, it's probably unlikely to happen because there's a few things that actually offset. What's important to know for the preferences here is that that blue dot applies to the regionally significant projects. The yellow dot applies to locally significant projects, and the white dot applies to all projects. So the first one that we're going to talk about is for regional projects. And we're going to talk real quickly about the background for the Visionary Trail System. I know many of you are familiar with it, but I know that some of you might not all be familiar with the Visionary System. So back in 2006, we were doing our first state trails plan. We had a charrette, and we invited a lot of stakeholders from around the state to come and give us input, let us know what their demand for trail was, where they wanted to see trail projects, and what they were working on. And from that, we created the Visionary Trail System. To be a Visionary Trail, you need to be a multi-county trail. And then there's two lines on this map. There's the Visionary, and then there's the potential Visionary. The Visionary are the solid green line. The potential Visionary is those dotted corridors there. And the difference between that is just some feasibility. So we've had this map since 2006. We updated that in 2016 after a charrette, again, working with the stakeholders to get all of their stuff designed.
The next slide.
Webinar, can you hear me? All right, so look, working through some issues on the webinar. So again, there are two things on the state Visionary Trail System, both Visionary and potential. We'll be looking at both of those when we evaluate that preference. So preferences for local projects will be given to local projects that connect schools, parks, neighborhoods, commercial centers, or other local attractions. We'll be evaluating this on the number of connections, the significance of those, and the quality. These now apply to all projects. So these preferences were given to partnerships. Partnerships are defined as something. A partner is defined as someone or an organization that provides substantial financial or other valuable resources to the project. An example of that might be a community foundation that donates a certain amount to the project. If they are donating a grant amount of, let's say $50,000, they would be a partner in that project. Oh, there.
Sorry.
The other thing that we'll give preference to are those projects that are on accelerated timelines. So all projects have that 4-year maximum to get their project done. The sooner you can get it done, the better, but we still are looking for realistic timelines. Preferences will be given to projects that connect multiple cities, towns, and counties. This can be done on both the regional and local level. We'll be looking at, the quality, number, and significance of those connections. Preferences given to projects that connect or extend existing trails. Again, this is a connectivity program, so we really want to see the trail network grow. And we were especially looking for projects that close gaps or make critical connections. Preference will also be given to projects that are part of an existing regional or comprehensive plan. Some communities and areas have already participated in a regional cities program in which they put together a regional plan. Some communities, such as counties, have a county comprehensive plan, or they may even have a trails plan specific to their area. If your project is part of that, we would like to know. So the considerations are something that we'll be looking at secondary. So it's not the primary thing we'll be looking at, but definitely something that we will be considering when we evaluate your project. Again, the blue is for regional significant projects, and the yellow is for locally significant projects. The white applies to all.
Go too far.
Yes, one far. So this is another example where the regional and the local diverge. The regional will be looking at projects that are part of a national or a multi-state trail system. The best example that we can give to you at the moment is the American Discovery Trail. And you can see on this map that is the kind of red or brown dashed line where the red arrows are pointing out. And that's kind of a nationally significant trail system. But there are other systems that are going to be considered for this criteria as well. Things that cross state bounds, are part of another national trail system, certainly would be considered. Thanks, Al. So this is a consideration for local projects. This is for counties considered deficient in trail miles per capita. So you'll see our lovely map, which is probably the best way to explain this criteria. It's based on our Indiana Trails Inventory. So we have an inventory of all the trail miles in the state that we know of, as well as U.S. Census data. So we can develop how many miles you have per 1,000 residents in your county, and then you're given a point value from 0 to 5 of how deficient you are in trail miles. And
we know that these maps are difficult to see from the room. We have posters at the back of the room that depict these maps that you can look at later.
And if you have the application packet online, you can actually click the link and get links to these maps as well. So consideration for projects that provide access to a population not currently within 5-mile radius of a trail. So remember when I talked about that 2006 State Trails Plan? Well, originally we had a goal of providing a trail within 7.5 miles of every Hoosier. We've virtually met that goal, and so we decided to up the goal in 2016 in our new State Trails Plan. So our goal was to have a trail within 5 miles of every Hoosier. Currently, we are at 96%, so that's pretty high. But if you look at this map, you can definitely see that there's still some white areas on that map. So if you have a project that's going to hit one of those white areas, they're hitting a population not served with the trail, then your project will get some extra consideration. Consideration will also be given to statewide distribution of funds. As much as we'd love, I'm sure this room would love all of the money to come to the central Indiana area, we have to hopefully spread it out throughout the state. So consideration will be given to projects that are offered in collaboration with another next level trail applicant. So that means if there are 2 projects that are submitted that are working together directly adjacent to each other, would be considered working in collaboration. So if they apply at the same time and say, community A and nonprofit B are working together, and they're both submitting and they're both completing a corridor, even if they're submitting separately, they're working in collaboration with each other, they would receive points for this category. Consideration will also be given to projects that exceed that 20% minimum match. So again, an example of this would be if you had 30% match, then you'd actually only have a grant request for 70% of your total project cost. Consideration will also be given to projects that develop the most miles of trail. This is the goal of the program is to develop the most miles of trail we can with that $90 million. So that's a pretty clear and easy one that we want to see. We can't give you an actual number, just more is better. Consideration will also be given to projects that accommodate multiple types of trail use. So the more users that can use your trail, and this can be, again, you can have a project that has multiple users and even multiple surface types.
User types.
User types.
So this slide just kind of lays out the timeline that each project will follow. This will be applicable to this round. It will also be applicable to future rounds. We will accept applications. There will be the review and ranking period for applications. We will announce the awards. A contract will be signed with the DNR, and funds will be provided up front based on milestones. We talked about those earlier. Those could include design and engineering, land acquisition, trail development. Those are going to be project specific. And within 4 years of the contract period, we'll get to the point where the trail is complete and open. So the next series of slides is going to walk you through how to apply. One of the handouts that you have is a sample application form that is filled out for the fictional city of Hoosierburg in Hoosier County. The idea is to give you an example of how to fill out the application, what information goes where. We're going to walk through some of that. The application form that you'll find online is fillable, which means that you can type into it online. You'll be able to print it out. The financial components of the fillable form will auto-calculate. So as you add line items to the project cost, to the match, etc., it will automatically calculate your grant request amount. It will also calculate the percentage match. If you print the form and handwrite into the form, the auto-calculate function will not work. Just want to draw attention to that. We have detailed application instructions in that application handbook that go through basically every item on this form. And we're going to walk through those here in a second. Another item that you have in your handbook is a cost breakdown. This accompanies the application form. It's also for the fictional city of Hoosierburg and their fictional application to Next Level Trails. Includes the total project cost, total match value, and grant amount request. These all need to match the numbers that are on your application form. This breakdown is where you put the very specific line items for construction costs, etc. Match documentation is part of the application checklist. That's in the. It's also a handout that you have. Match can come basically from 3 sources. It would be funds provided by the applicant. For those, we will need you to attach a statement from a fiscal agent certifying the availability and source of those funds. For land value, we'll need you to provide an appraisal or alternative evidence of value that it's acceptable to DNR. This is for the value of land that your organization owns that's being offered as match as a part of this program. And finally, monetary contributions or donations of materials or labor. We'll need a commitment letter on letterhead or an affidavit for each one of those from each partner that details its level of commitment. And again, a partner for the purposes of this program is somebody who's providing significant financial or other value to the application. Well, Amy covered the project narrative.
All right, so on that application form, there'll be a brief spot for a short summary of your project. That's going to be a 1 or 2 sentence thing. The project narrative is going to have a more detailed description. That might have acreage. That will include land you're acquiring and land that you have already own or have control of. That'll include things like trail amenities that you have planned to put in, bike racks, trailheads, things such as those. Trail mileage, we want to know that overall mileage that you're going to be providing. Trail width might have trail surface type, trail uses, how you'll meet accessibility guidelines and laws, and as well as other outstanding items about your trail. So if you have a natural surface trail that has a difficulty level, then you will put that kind of information in the detailed project narrative. Project narrative will also have a project timeline. The timeline should have when you start and plan on finishing your project. You just need the month and the year for that. Try to be as accurate as possible. Our staff will be reviewing that just to make sure that looks like a feasible timeline. The timeline will also need to have major project milestones in there. When you plan on doing construction, when you plan on having your land acquisition complete. Also, you want to note and document any previously completed work that contributed to your project, so we kind of know where you are when you begin. We will need a narrative about the connectivity. Again, this program has a strong focus on connectivity. So we want to know what cities, towns, and counties that you'll be connecting to, existing trails that you're connecting to or extending, where you are on the state visionary trail system if your project is on there, any other schools, parks, neighborhoods, commercial centers, or local attractions that your trail will connect. In addition to having that in narrative form, we're also going to ask that you have that on your map, which is later part of the documentation that we'll be requesting. So we talked a little bit about financial partnerships earlier. Financial partnerships do show up on the main application form. You will need to have a commitment letter from every one of those partners that you list on your application form. Again, that partner is someone that provides substantial financial or other valuable resources to your project. So an example here for Hoosierberg is that the community foundation is going to be donating money. That community foundation might have already donated that money, or they plan on, if awarded, if you guys are awarded that grant. So they would write a letter letting us know of that commitment. They would also need a commitment letter for people doing in-kind donation or labor, things like that as well. Finally, we have the environmental, cultural permits and clearances part of the project narrative. We need you to describe in narrative form the effect on any applicable cultural, historic, archaeological, architectural resources that are on your corridor or part of your project. And then you'll have to note any clearances or permits that you will need for that. You may have already been working on clearance and permits, so if you have that documentation, you can submit that as part of your application packet. But if you have not, we need you to go ahead and start the DNR early coordination process. And once you start that, you will get a coordination letter, and you can submit that as proof that you're looking into that. And just so you know, this is state funding, so NEPA and other federal funding requirements will not apply, but applicants still must comply with state and federal laws. Examples of those might be construction in a floodway, Indiana bat restrictions, things like that that you need to be aware of. We still need you to comply with those laws.
Leave it on. I'm going to try and use this microphone. It sounds like the other one was giving a lot of trouble in this room. Can you all hear me in the back? I didn't hear any no's. Item number 5 that we'll need attached with the application packet is a site conceptual map. We have an example on the screen. This needs to show the trail in local context. It needs to highlight connections to other cities, towns, counties, etc., to existing trails, to schools, parks, neighborhoods, commercial centers, other local attractions. It's especially helpful if this map can be superimposed over an aerial. That goes a long way to helping us place it in context. Here's another example of a site conceptual map. It ought to depict any existing constructed features, so it may be hard to tell here, but this map shows ball fields in a park, that type of infrastructure that exists, how the trail interacts with that. Location of proposed trail amenities, label any potential impacts to natural or other cultural resources, If the project involves land acquisition, it needs to show a plat of the parcels to be acquired, those that you own, etc. That's a lot of information to put on one map. If you need to put it on multiple maps, that's acceptable. I mean, don't send us like 50 maps. Try and put it together as best you can, but it may need to be on several different maps to show different layers. We understand that. Site photographs are going to be important. We're going to require those for every application. These ought to be keyed to the map. So examples of that would, if you could place a letter or a number on the map that shows where we are and then explain what we're looking at and which direction we're looking and from where we're looking. So back to our fictional city of Hoosierburg application. The photo on the left is the proposed trailhead. It's looking north from Hoosier Boulevard. Photo number 2 is looking south from Hoosier Pike. That's as complicated as it needs to be. Item number 7 on the checklist, design and engineering plans. If you already have those complete, provide a copy to us as a part of the application. Plans will be reviewed to DNR staff prior to bidding and construction. Please note that not all of these projects are going to require full design and engineering. I also want to call your attention to, John mentioned that these funds flowed through INDOT and that there were a couple of strings that came with that. One of those that's important to note is that if you need to hire professional services like design and engineering, you'll be required to hire somebody. It must be performed by an entity that is pre-qualified by INDOT. We can put you in touch with INDOT to help answer questions about that. If you're not hiring a design and engineering firm, if you're a city and you have a city engineer, there might be other reasons why you do not need a design and engineering component to this, this does not apply. This applies if you are hiring a design and engineering firm.
And just professional services means that design and engineering component, this does not apply, the pre-qualified does not apply to construction costs.
Yes.
Construction contractors.
Item number 8 on the checklist, this goes back into some of the project evaluation. If this project is a part of a regional or comprehensive plan, so if this applies to you, provide the name and date of the plan, a copy of the pages that are relevant to the proposed project. If it's online, you can just provide us a link and the applicable page numbers. So for example of this could be regional cities planning, it could be a county's planning and zoning board, their comprehensive plan, etc. So the example we have on here is the Hoosier County Planning Department Comprehensive Plan. Please only attach the relevant pages. We do not need the entire plan. We only need the parts of the plan that are specific to the trail. Item number 9 on the checklist is a summary management and maintenance plan in 1 page or less. Explain how the applicant will manage and maintain the project over the useful life of the project. Item number 10 is jurisdictional approval letter and letters of support. So this is important. Applicants must provide letters of support from the jurisdictional authority, county, city, town, relevant to the location of the proposed project. If the proposed project is going through multiple of these, we need one from each. Applicants may additionally provide letters of support from the community, key stakeholders. The intent of these would be to demonstrate the breadth of support that the project has. Please limit these within reason. Please don't send us hundreds of these. Send us a sample of them or the most important ones. Another example that might capture this is responses to a community survey or kind of a summary of those responses. These just serve to demonstrate the community support for your project. And it's important to note that letters of support for the purposes of this program do not constitute partnerships. Partners, again, are entities that are providing substantial financial or other resources to your application. Item number 11 is the project contact list. This basically tells us who we need to get a hold of for certain components of your project. So examples of that would be the project manager, the contract signatory, the fiscal manager, Could be like the city engineer, could be your consultant, could be you. But that's who we would need to get a hold of as we work through the stages of development on the project. Basic contact information, name, phone number, email address. Items 12 and 13, current easements and deeds. This is for property that is currently controlled by the applicant and intended for development through Next Level Trails. We need a copy of the recorded deed, lease, or easement for each of those properties that you already control and that you're intending to develop with Next Level Trails. Also include any existing easements that pertain to those properties. Examples of that would be utility easements, access easements, if you have agricultural crossing easements, etc. We need a copy of those easements that pertain to the property that you own. These next slides are going to pertain specifically to projects that involve land acquisition as a component of the grant. We know that these will probably be some of the more complicated projects that we see, and this gets into some sort of complicated real estate things that we may need to provide you additional guidance on. So we understand that these can be difficult, so if you have questions about that, we'll work with you. Land that is acquired or donated in fee simple for the trail must remain in public outdoor recreation use in perpetuity, and that will be handled via deed restriction. Land that is acquired in easement must remain in public trail use for the term of the easement, which should be no less than 25 years. That's basically associated with the useful life of the trail that will be built. Easements in perpetuity are much preferred over a 25-year easement. That is the bare minimum. Need to submit evidence of value for each acquisition that will occur during the project. This goes back to that cost breakdown. That cost breakdown needs to be as accurate as possible. And so in order to do that, we need evidence of value for each acquisition. That would be an appraisal or alternative evidence of value that's acceptable to DNR, and those will all be reviewed, subject to review by DNR land acquisition staff. Letters of intent, this is item number 15 on the checklist. For each acquisition of real estate that will occur within the project, applicants must provide a letter of intent, option, or purchase agreement for those acquisitions. This is intended to protect the state, but also you, to ensure that the application that's being submitted is feasible. If you have a willing seller, the applicant must at minimum provide a signed letter of intent demonstrating the seller's willingness to transfer the land to the applicant. It's not on the website yet, but we have a sample letter of intent that includes some of the important items that should be on that letter. And we're going to get that posted on the website shortly. We'll make that available to everybody. If it is a donation or bargain sale, the letter needs to clearly state that the seller's intention to donate or sell the land below market value. Projects with land acquisition under option or contract are going to be viewed favorably over those just with the letter of intent. For any parcels for which the applicant cannot provide a letter of intent signed by a willing seller, you need to provide a commitment letter demonstrating the appropriate local unit of government's willingness to exercise their right of eminent domain, if necessary. This is the last option after all other options have been exhausted. Eminent domain should be the last thing that is approached for these. And I'm going to turn over to Amy for a few other required items.
So, you guys are going to get a grant awarded to you from the DNR. You will be considered doing business with the state of Indiana. So what does it mean to do business in the state of Indiana, and how do you have to be eligible to do business to receive your grant? We're going to go over that. So the first thing is that you have to be viewed as a vendor in our state accounting system. In order to do that, you will need to submit a W-9 a direct deposit form before the round deadline. You can go ahead and do this ahead of turning in your application packet checklist, and you're not going to submit this as part of your application packet. It will go directly to DNR vendor forms at dnr.in.gov. But you need to have this, otherwise we can't get you money if you are awarded. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, and it needs to be done up front because we have a tight window to get these applications in before our accounting deadline. So if there are any issues, we want those to happen now and not a week before the deadline. So that's why we're requiring that this be done before, as you apply.
The other thing that's going to be required as you apply by all projects is to be part of the state bidder registration system. Bidders are considered in the state registration system as being approved by the IDOA, and they have to be a registered bidder to sign a contract. All of our contracts, if you're awarded a grant, will be signed electronically, and so to get into the system, you have to be a IDOA approved bidder. So you can register, or even if you have a community and you're already a bidder, you can update your profile on their website. And the sufficient evidence for us for your application packet is just a screenshot of your bidder profile showing your bidder ID number. The next ones apply just to make sure that nonprofits are eligible. So to be considered an eligible applicant, you do have to be a 501c3. You can prove your nonprofit status as a 501c3 by submitting a IRS letter of determination. That's the easiest way to do that. Just a copy of this or other sufficient documentation should be included in your application packet if you're a nonprofit. Nonprofits also need to be registered with the Indiana Secretary of State's office to be eligible for Next Level Trail. And we also want to bring to your attention that nonprofits, if they are awarded a Next Level Trail grant, this is considered governmental financial assistance, and you'll have to submit an EAR, or Entity Annual Report, or Form E1, to the State Board of Accounts annually for oversight. So they just need to know that you've received funding. So this is after you got awarded, but we want to make this, bring this to your attention now just so you know. So that was probably a lot of information to process. I'm sure we kind of went through that fairly fast, within an hour, but now is when we were opening it up to general questions. These are questions that you can have for us that you think that other people in the room may have the same question, or that will get value out of hearing the answer to. Again, if you have a project-specific question, we will be, our staff of experts will be in this room until 6 to answer project-specific questions. So, yep, we'll start with the microphone heading around.